There's a real possibility that next year you may not be able to watch me. Watch me on this channel because of this threat of a broadcast shutdown that we heard yesterday from the communications minister. And it has to do with, from what I understand, some $62 million that the state has accumulated because of the DTT platform, on which, of course, many channels currently operate, right? And if somebody doesn't pay that bill, the minister says, it becomes seriously untenable for they to continue, for this government to continue in these current economic conditions, to continue footing that bill, which means you can't watch me. That is how dire this threat is. And so let's have a conversation about it. Let's try and understand what really is the problem. And a few things came up yesterday by the communications minister. And he accused the broadcasters of refusing to pay. You pay for the platform that, of course, they sit on that transmits these signals that you watch me on. It's made possible by DTT, right? And many other channels also. And he says the broadcasters are refusing to pay. And because they're refusing to pay, it's causing a bit of a headache, especially because if you look at the current economic circumstances, government can no longer bear that entire burden. And so the signals to our homes may be cut next year if this continues. So pause for a second, wake up one morning and you want to watch your favorite morning show on television, the AM show, and you can't watch it. You can't watch PM Express because there's a huge cost that has been accumulated over many, many years. Now, the minister then goes ahead from now what we understand from the GIBA, which is the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, to send out invoices to broadcasting houses. It first started off at $15,000 a month. And then according to GIBA, the minister then says that has been discounted to $10,000. And trust me, $10,000 a month for any media organization in Ghana will cripple it. Because broadcasting houses in Ghana, don't believe the fanfare. They are not on solid ground when it comes to finances. I mean, they aren't rich. So you can understand the trepidation when they got this invoice. And the minister says, since that invoice was sent, it hasn't been paid. But GIBA has taken action when they got these invoices. I'll come to that pretty shortly and what action they took. We got a bit more from GIBA because GIBA makes the point that the minister has no legal right to set the fees that I just showed you. Right? That's GIBA's position. That the minister simply hasn't got the right to do what she's done. So they are fighting the minister on that point. And one of the things that they also make is that legal right is something that they are challenging, right, at the courts. And that for the avoidance of that, the broadcasters are willing to pay. They have never at any point said they are not willing to pay. But what they are talking about is ensuring that a process that leads to the setting of these tariffs is a fair process, right? And that is essentially what GIBA has been saying. And because if you go back to 2018, they have been talking about the transmission, the tariff model for this. And this whole process to arrive at something that was fair, they say, was halted at that time. And they were very, very active in that particular process. And that they accuse the minister of deliberately, since that time, has refused not to meet GIBA since 2018 to proceed with these discussions to arrive at something that is workable. And it's so, in essence, GIBA's point is not because we have refused to pay, because the minister has refused to meet us, right? And GIBA has never cited this non-payment of fees, that they want to pay. They know that being carried on this platform comes with a cost, and they're willing to pay that amount. And by the way, the minister was clear that she does not recognize GIBA. As you see, GIBA's locus in this matter, but she recognizes their constituent members. In other words, this media organization, which you watch us on, right? And GIBA accepts that this has to be paid for, and they're ready to pay. But what is fair is a key question. So how will this affect you? Assuming The two parties involved in this, Giba and the ministry, failed to come to some settlement on this particular matter, some agreement on this matter. Well, as you see here, we have 53 TV stations on DTT, according to the NCA, right? And so you can expect that they will be affected. The total number of on-air TV stations is quite a lot, 118, but 58 will be affected. And this may include your favorite TV channel. So that's first thing to note. And then you look at the general scope of television that we have in this country, and there are numbers there, all according to the NCA, just laying out for us the DTT free-to-air TV program channels, right? The service coverage, you have the total number of 421. That if you do the whole number, is what you come to what I said earlier. And if you look at the DTT free-to-air TV program channel, the regional coverage, you're talking about 6 of them. Paid television, we don't have any just yet, but across the continent, this is something that is very well known, say in South Africa. So some have actually gone to the extent of saying this is also a matter of freedom of the press, right? Which is important because if cost comes in, it will necessarily mean some broadcasting houses are unable to broadcast, which will mean in essence that the less number of television channels you have on your television stations, less voices you have articulating many issues. So freedom of press comes in here. Well, we'll talk about that and do the extension. Again, Giba puts out this, the most television stations also sit on the DTH platforms also. And so, of course, some of them may not be affected if there's a shutdown, but this number will be affected, as you see there on your television screens. And the various types of DTH that we have is what you see on your screens here. That brings you down to the 61. So let's have that conversation. It's a very important conversation. And I want to return from the break. When I return, my guests will join me for this very critical matter. Because as we go into next year, the minister has said something has to happen. So we avert possible shutdown of your favorite television channel. And thanks for staying with us here on PM Express. It's talking about something that may affect this show. So I have a special interest in this. But we need to ask the questions because if you are, that debt is pretty huge. And we'll talk about that pretty shortly. But PM Express is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Alomu bitters. Experience greatness in every moment. Ghana AIDS Commission. And Syntex Tanks is the tank for you. It is the first to introduce a double layer tank. And now you can have as many layers as you want. Syntex Tanks is first to introduce the white inner layer tanks in Ghana. We now introduce to you the customer specs order, which lets you order any color and size of preference. Syntex Tanks gives you the longest warranty of 7 years, which no other tank gives you in Ghana. So whatever your water consumption, size of project or demand, choose Syntex Tanks. We have agents nationwide. Call them on 0244 335 168 or shop online at syntexgh.com. Call them on that line. Air strong, air tough. My guest with me is Sam George. He's the deputy ranking on the Communications Committee in Parliament, and he joins me on this matter. Also joining me is the Cecil Sunkwa Mills. He's the president of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and I want to start with him. And Cecil, since yesterday, when we heard the details from the minister, has any conversations happened between yourself and her? Have you reached out? Has anything changed since yesterday?
Good evening to your viewers, and thanks for the opportunity. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, all right. So far since yesterday, of course, no conversation has happened, but we've had a couple of conversations with some of the media stations, and we've also we've written a release to explain our position to that specific issue.
I mean, yesterday, Sam George enlightened us that we're owing Sam George, I think, $62 million, correct? because of the DT usage. The minister says broadcasting houses have refused to pay. Have you refused to pay?
Broadcasting houses have not done a payment. By principle, the invoices that were sent have not been paid. If it's that basis, yes, payment has not been done, but broadcasters are willing to pay. But I guess even though in this case, the DTT platform is a special service for the country and for the stations that are on board, I believe even when you're buying a service of that nature, there are some terms and conditions that apply. This would all have been embodied not just a price, but would have been embodied in a complete policy guideline of what to expect as a station. And so that is also part of the number of things that are not adequate. And besides that, we had spoken about the process at which the price, the invoice or the rate, irrespective of the amount that was arrived at, we have spoken that the process was not legit, it was not appropriate, it was not engaging, and we actually wrote about that. And then we further wrote to the Parliamentary Select Committee, of which my honorable brother Otweli also is on that. And we had a discussion on this. That discussion was the beginning of trying to find middle ground towards this whole thing about the pricing and other important issues about this service being offered to stations in Ghana, which is on the DTT platform. So we had that meeting, and in good faith, we only waited for the follow-up meeting because we had a long and very detailed meeting, only for invoices to be dropped of a figure that had been discussed, that had not been responded to, because at the meeting the ministry the minister had with selected stations on that day, the stations had asked questions that, how did they arrive at the figure? And I guess the basis of the question of the stations is, there are stations that are also sitting on other platforms, and they do have an idea of rates of coverage. So they wanted to know why a figure, a discounted figure even of 10,000 was arrived at. The minister did promise that they would share the basis of how this figure was arrived with the members. That never happened. We communicated all these concerns at that meeting. And the meeting just scheduled that there was going to be a follow-up meeting, only for invoices to be dropped the next day to the station to make payment for that to an entity which had been catered and not introduced even to the members. So based on that action, and of course, when somebody gives you an invoice of that nature and you are sitting on a platform and you are rendering such a critical service as media, it's important that we make sure that it's sustained. So at that point, we quickly sought the interpretation from the courts to ensure that there was no disruption in the service and that invoice did not take the wrong effect that we was intended.
Okay, so that's where you were until the announcement yesterday. Before I come to Sam George, briefly, in 2 minutes, explain. When we say DTT, what is it? And why is it so expensive?
DTT is very easy it's quite simple to explain. We used to have analog, which is, if you look at your antenna, you get, when you swing it in different ways, you tend to have a hash and the graying of the TV, etc. And for analog, each station has to ride on a specific frequency. Now, with the new technology, what happens is that with one frequency, you can actually put, in fact, 20 to 24 stations on one frequency. In some cases, 16. But what happens is that with this technology, it allows you to use frequency more efficiently. So you can use two frequencies and put a lot more channels on it, and then free other frequencies for other use, especially in the telco and white space area. So the other benefit is that your quality of your signal is very clear. Your signal is should be very stable. You shouldn't get loss of signal depending on how it is done, but it has a lot more benefits. The only thing is that you will need to still build transmitters across the country and rebroadcast into specific communities to give coverage to people. So it's an alternative that was supposed to bring a lot more benefit. And it's important to say that with the initiation of DTT, the Ghana through the ministry had the opportunity to further sell bandwidth and to make money from that bandwidth in other means. So there was also a financial benefit that came through to the government by going DTT.
Okay, and Sam George, this is an initiative policy that was started and Omanibuama that was under the NDC.
In fact, it actually goes as far back as 2005. Okay. Let me say good evening to our listeners. As far back as 2005 under President Kufuor, and then Ghana signed in 2006. But the infrastructure for DTT was given to KNET in 2015 to execute under Omanibuama. I think that it's important to put this in perspective, and I hear the alarm at $10,000 and the fact that it looks like it's a lot of money. Yes, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for media houses.
However, let's put this in perspective so that our viewers appreciate the whole gamut of this. And for me, this has no political coloration because this is about the technical facts. When we were running analog stations or analog transmission and not doing digital, a media house like Multimedia, I can tell you for a fact, was spending more than $10,000 every month in sending out your signal. Because you had your transmitter stations, your base stations, the cost of diesel to run those generators or electricity bills, the cost of human resource in these transmitter base stations, the cost of even your engineers having to go there from time to time and equipment was all cost you had to bear. And don't forget that in 2015, 2016, when we rolled out the DTT, the cost of diesel, for example, a gallon of diesel was about 13 cedis per liter. Today, a gallon, 13 cedis per gallon. Today, a liter is about 12 cedi 50 pesos. So just on the fuel cost alone of running your base stations and cells and transmission sites, you without inflation or anything, just fuel alone, you would have seen almost a 400% increase. So if you're looking at $10,000 per se, it really is not as though it is an astronomical figure compared to what your cost of operation and the analog was. However, I get the argument that there's an economies of scale because right now all of that cost is being taken off the shoulders of the media houses, the broadcasters, and everybody is contributing their feed to the head end. And then the head end has a management company that manages the infrastructure, in this case KNET, and they run the sites and manage the sites. Now the cost of 62 million.
So they will redistribute?
Yeah, they do the distribution. They do distribution through all the, I think they have about 42 transmission sites or so, either 42 or 45 across the country. Now, the cost of running those transmission sites is no longer the cost, it's no longer the burden of the broadcasters. It's now the burden of the management company that has the O&M. And so that comes at a cost. Again, even the uplink and all of that comes at a cost. So that's what has accumulated about $62 million. I don't think it's dead sitting down. The ministry has been paying. Government has been paying on behalf of
KNET?
Pays to KNET, and KNET pays its supplier because the uplink is not KNET's facility. You understand? So KNET gets a fee from running and maintaining the infrastructure, but a chunk of that fee goes to the service provider, the third-party service provider. Now, the point here is the ministry is saying we are no longer going to pay KNET. In fact, I'm aware they've stopped making those payments. And it's saying that GIBA and his members must pay. Now, that is what the minister came to say in Parliament. If GIBA is not paying and the ministry is not paying, the service provider is going to cut connection to the DTT infrastructure, the uplink, for distribution. So then that means that the entire infrastructure will shut down. And that's why we need to have some kind of arrangement for payment. Look, everybody knows my position when it comes to issues around the communication sector and my relationship with the minister. It's a very bittersweet one. But the facts are the facts. And I believe that even Mr. Sonkwamil Cecil, I was with him on your show yesterday. Giba has made it clear they are not averse to paying. Good. So we have an understanding that this service must be paid for. It can't be free. If the service must be paid for, who pays for it? Now, it is the broadcasters who use the infrastructure who have to pay for it. And that's always been in the roadmap that has been built for this DTT thing. Now, the question here is, why are we at an impasse right now? The ministry has determined a price, $15,000.
Which is discounted to $10,000.
Discounted subsequently to $10,000. Giba is saying, on what basis have you arrived at $10,000? Now, show us how you've arrived at that $10,000. Let's have that conversation. That's a fair demand to make if you ask me. I would think that the ministry should sit with Giba and say, this is how we arrived at 10,000. In fact, this is how we arrived at 15,000. And this is what we've taken out that brings you to 10,000. And that's why we think 10,000 is a fair price to pay. Giba can come with its counter proposal. At this point, I have not seen any counter proposal from Giba either.
They say they haven't seen the reasons and the breakdown. So because of that, they can also come with a counter.
No, but when we met Giba, I made that suggestion to Giba.
They should come with a counter.
Bring the counter.
But it must know first how the minister arrived at that number.
You see, the thing is, if Giba had brought us a counter, as ranking member on the communications committee, I could interrogate those numbers. And if they made sense economically, it could be a position I'll be espousing today on your show. But I don't have a counter position to the minister's position.
Has the minister explained hers to the committee?
She has shown us some build-up, okay, that she thinks justifies this. Basically, what they've done is they've looked at the operating cost for analog stations. They've looked at other DTH service providers and what currently broadcasters are paying, either to be on DSTV or be on the multi-TV platform or Go TV. So there are all of those other pricing mechanisms that are around, and they've looked at what they are offering and put that price. So bring a counter, let's look at it. Now, apart from that, Giba has gone to court. Again, I hold the view that litigation will not fix this problem. Giba has some legitimate case to make when they say even if the 10,000 is the acceptable fee, the minister on her own cannot impose that fee because this is a public fee and charge. So it must come to the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament for them to approve the fees and charges upon which the minister can then charge that fee. I'm aware NCA has appeared before fees and charges during this budget season. I'm not a member of the subsidiary legislation.
So you don't know if this is the case that it comes.
I don't know if this fee has been put in there, but I would urge the ministry. I know that Giba has gone to court, challenging the authority of the ministry. Some people in the ministry may think that because there is a case in court, it means that they cannot come to parliament. That is not the position of the law. I have checked with attorney generals to understand that if Giba's case currently in court stops the minister from coming before parliament with her fees and charges, because Giba is asking for a determination of her action. And they said to me that the courts cannot stop a public officer from conducting a public service for the public benefit. Now, broadcast is a public service for public benefit. So I think that the resolution to this matter, Madam Minister, if you are listening, come to Parliament and justify before the Subsidiary Legislation Committee your fee and charge for the DTT head end. The Subsidiary Legislation Committee will interrogate it. If they need some advice from the Communication Committee, they may invite us to sit in there, and then that will then be approved along with the budget, because we normally do fees and charges in that sequence with appropriation and all of that. Then you then have a legal basis from January. Again, whatever Parliament will approve this December cannot be retroactive. It's prospective. It then means that from January, everybody in the country knows that this is the fee approved by Parliament for the DTT. So I think that the resolution to this matter is the minister coming to Parliament with a fee. I also think that Giba must be minded not to be overly litigious, because you may still be in court, but if the minister fulfills the legal requirement of coming to Parliament,
and Parliament approves
it, you would have to pay.
The minister, though, on the floor of Parliament.
Engage the minister now. Let us get a fee that is more amenable to Giba for that to be what appears before Parliament.
Except that they've said in your statement the minister doesn't want engagement. Yesterday, Heather, she says, I don't recognize Giba.
Again, I think that position by the minister is untenable. Giba is the umbrella organization for broadcasters. If broadcasters feel that they want to, on their own, engage the ministry, they will state so. But so far as they have given that, for want of a better phrase, power of attorney to Giba to do this negotiation on their side, that's why I still think that Mr. Cecil and his people should bring a counter proposal. Let's have that conversation and let that drive whatever figure is going to the fees and charges. Because like I said, NCA has already appeared. If they have brought a figure without this consultation, you've lost the opportunity to have a say in there. And that's why I'm saying that, and that's why I thought, and I suggested to Giba when they met us, that let's keep this at the committee and continue to use the committee as a ground for more engagement, because the minister was refusing to meet with Giba. But when the committee summoned the minister and invited Giba into that meeting, we had a meeting with the minister. So the minister cannot turn down a summons from Parliament. Giba can come to Parliament and we will give them audience. And we could have found a platform for these negotiations to have happened.
Let me ask Cecil that. Cecil, what do you make of what St. George is proposing?
We had, in fact, first of all, let me talk about the issue of the amount of fees. I don't think that it's a secondary concern. Our primary concern is the process. Now, you would find that the process of engagement, be it through the ministry or if we're doing that engagement, including the select committee, are the components that Sam is talking about. We would have done comparative analysis of different rates. And I'm sure broadcasters know that DTT is not the only platform that distribution in the country can take place. And there are other options. And how much, if you're running a commercial business, you would ask yourself, how much are other platforms also charging? What are the ranges, etc.? So there is some discussion that must be had. And out of that discussion, we would arrive on some figure. And with that figure, we can translate it further to the point where it gets approved.
What about presenting your counter offer? What about presenting your counter offer to the 10,000?
So listen to what happened. We met the select committee with the minister. We had an agreement that there was going to be a follow-up meeting so we could tie this up. The next day, the minister had come out with her prices and sent out invoices. How does that look in the face of the select committee? That we had sat down together and started a conversation. Now the invoice had stipulated deadlines. Who do you expect us to go to? When we basically
you go back to the committee.
We did speak to the committee. At that time, they were off, and they had given us time that when they come back. And we thought the best action was to also seek interpretation in terms of the court, because we believe there was a process that should have happened that didn't happen. It didn't happen. And does the minister really have that authority? We wanted to have that clear, to set a figure, because that figure was from the ministry's desk. We do not know how it was made. Sam is telling us some details now.
But
so if we haven't had an engagement, they haven't requested this kind of information from us recently, and he's now saying it here, that's a different issue. But who is saying it? Is it the select committee asking, let us meet again, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah. And
I think you see one thing that we should be wary of. We should not treat a media platform like any other business. It is the only pillar we have to hold our democracy in place. And the moment, especially you can actually squeeze the media space, even with the price of distribution. Because remember that the platform you have is the only DTT national platform. So if it is exorbitant, we can sit and put figures together for a price of anything that is that. But I don't believe that in some operations, we run the operations to completely just cover the cost of running it. Based on we have examples in other countries that if it's a media platform, they work out something. So if we've not had that discussion and you're going to go toe by toe and say that every cost and we haven't even delved into the actual cost of it or what has been presented. But remember, there are also people within GIBA who actually own platforms. We can do a comparative and come up with something reasonable and even further extend. Do we expect GBC to pay $10,000 a month? Well, if that is it, then we'll look at that. Community radio stations, there's a whole discussion we need to have. It's a bit simplistic to look at the commercial model of exactly how much you have spent, and then you just divide and split and throw it around. That is a very simplistic model. It is not operated like that, especially for media in so many countries, because you want your media to survive.
Now, let's look at the case in court. First, I'm interested. Did you ask for an injunction to be placed on the minister's attempt to get you to pay, to honor those invoices?
Well, it is implied, but we did not specifically ask one. Yes,
of course.
Implied.
Now, then I asked the question, because that's the reality. The minister explained that there will be consequences next year. So whilst the case is going on and the debt keeps accumulating, eventually it will lead to a situation where the platform itself cannot sustain itself because the debt will become too much for it to continue. Just for those who haven't heard the minister explain this, listen to what she says about the consequence next year while the case pens and while GIBA and its members haven't honored those invoices.
None of the broadcasters on the DTT platform pay for using it as I speak. And this situation cannot continue in our current economic state. GIBA is not a broadcaster hosted on this platform. So I don't know in which capacity they would be acting. They have constituent members who are broadcasters on the DTT platform, but none of them have paid a peswa to date for being hosted on the platform. So it's not correct to state that any entity being hosted on the platform has paid for being hosted on it. They have not. There is actually matters pending in court because they have been notified that government has indicated that it cannot continue to pay for the operations and maintenance of this DTT platform. And so the users of the platform must pay for the services that they use. That notification has been sent to the broadcasters being hosted on the platform. Some of them are negotiating with the management of the DTT platform as to payment terms for it. Others are adamant that government should continue to pay. But my answer is clear, that government says it cannot continue to pay for it. So if they do not pay for it, unfortunately, we may find ourselves in the situation where we cannot receive TV broadcast signals because the platform will be shut down for non-payment of the operational expenses that it incurs. It is incurring. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to work together to ensure that this critical national information infrastructure stays operational.
So that's a reality that may befall us next year if nothing happens. Of course, your case is in court. How do you deal with that, though, whilst this case is pending? Because what the minister says will happen if nothing happens to pay the debt.
So we were in court in August. We filed that case in August. I think we should find out from the other parties when they responded in terms of timing, if it was important for them to explain exactly to the court. But I leave that to the court. But we filed in August. We're still in December. I guess we'll find out why there has been a delay.
Yeah, but
And it is not because we're in court.
Okay, but the delay, whoever is causing it, you are going to bear the brunt. You will lose an opportunity I will lose an opportunity to be here.
It depends on the outcome of the court. Because I guess the court believes that it is urgent.
No, I don't think so, though. I mean, it's just, I don't think it depends on the court. Remember what the minister just explained. Regardless of what's happening in court, the debt is piling. The people who manage the platform won't be able to sustain it. They can't pay for it. And so automatically, it has to go off because the debt is $62 million and it keeps piling. So that whole infrastructure will shut down by itself because of non-payment.
You see, there are a couple of other questions that we will still want to ask if we get the opportunity to engage. If there is anything apart from what is in court, we've always been available for engagement. But we even have questions on how we got to 62 million within the period of years. And that is why we are asking. Remember, you are dealing with broadcasters who actually also run platforms. So it's not completely, I mean, we're talking about the time and everything, but remember that it's a service that is given. If that service is given under terms which are not appropriate for media today, my brother, you will still one day sit as we are sitting today and you probably would not be broadcasting.
And that's true. And that's why I
keep probing it is not completely,
in the interim.
It is not completely just dependent on the amount and all that, and there are also conditions tied to it. And so it is a responsibility of everybody. It is a national responsibility of the ministry to engage with stakeholders. The ministry cannot also decide not to engage with a stakeholder because it is required.
But Sam George has offered a way out of this. The minister, of course, doesn't recognize you. So we know that. She stated it very categorically. But if you go to the committee will hear you. And the committee has the power to summon the minister to come and sit and talk.
Well, they should. The same way we went to them, I bet you that if the committee has invited us, Sam is saying that today, we've heard it on air, but if they have invited us, we will definitely be there. We've sent them other problems before, they've invited us before. So we're always open for a discussion. But I'm saying that it will not only be an issue of a threat because of time and amount, but there are other issues that have to be discussed.
Sam?
Yes, so you see, let's be clear on something. You can't have your cake and eat it. You can't cut your nose to spite your face. Unfortunately, that appears to be what Giba is doing. Because you can't be asking the ministry. And you see, whether it is Esla or Mani or whoever in the next John Mahama administration is sitting there, you can't take the ministry to court, sue the ministry, and expect that that same ministry you have sued would now come and engage you. Absolutely not. And there is precedence for this. When some media houses were shut down by the ministry, the committee stepped into it. And that was in 2021, when we invited the minister to have some deliberations. The minister made it clear that she won't sit with people who have sued the ministry. And that's a fair position anybody will take. Because if you want to negotiate with me, you can't be negotiating with me whilst you're squeezing me in court with a court suit. So the minister made a point in that instance, and this is a matter of records in Parliament. She said we should ask the media houses to withdraw their case from court and then subject themselves to the committee. She would equally do so, and we find a resolution. That's what led to the reversal of that ban. The media houses withdrew their cases from court. Because, look, the case was filed in August, yes. We're in December. Parliament has been sitting right now for about 6 weeks. In these 6 weeks, we could have done some work since we came in October to resolve this matter. In that 6 weeks, the committee can't get involved because one party has taken the other to court. They are in court. Secondly, you are also not making any headway in court. So there's a stalemate. And like you've pointed out, this stalemate would end up hurting Giba and his members. Government will definitely also have a price to pay because it will be on their watch that this will fail. But the point we must make here is that if the ministry says they've stopped making payments to KNET, because they can't support it anymore. And Kenneth is still carrying out his agreement with this third-party supplier. And Kenneth also writes back to the ministry and says, I can't continue footing this bill because I don't know who is going to pay. Because government says they won't pay. Even if government passes the fees and charges today, whatever has accrued, they cannot backdate charges to the broadcaster. So government would definitely have to pay that. Who pays for that? So if Kenneth decides that they want to cut their losses at a point in time and stop paying, what happens? The platform shuts down. And that's why I'm saying that, look, we should not wait for us to get to a place where the platform shuts down.
This will happen with or without a court outcome.
With or without a court outcome. And if you're not careful in the court process, we all know how the court processes are.
The court cannot order Kenya to keep the platform running because
who pays for it? And that's why I'm saying that, look, we should explore arbitration in this matter. For me, it is a more tenable approach than the court approach. Let's bring the ministry, let's bring Giba to the table, and let's have a conversation on what is the price build-up. Is Giba comfortable with it? What is Giba's counter? And let us discuss it. I've heard a talk about Giba members having their own platforms. I mean, those are not the same as a national single platform, DTT. I mean, there are different considerations in here. So you cannot use one to equate the other. But like I'm saying, we can reach a compromise position.
They're willing to engage. Will the committee invite them?
We can engage if the matter is not in court. Do you get it?
So let's just say they withdraw it first.
Yeah, so the point is, if Giba gives us an indication as a committee that they are willing and ready to reach a resolution on this matter, which is what I hear Cecil say, but if they let us know that, then we can reach out to the ministry as well and say, we want you to come and sit, let's resolve this matter. But one thing I know from hindsight and from previous instances is that the ministry would not sit if there is a case in court, because then they will tell you that the lawyers will tell you that will prejudice possibly their case. So if we really want to find a solution to this matter, let's bear in mind that a quicker solution can be arrived at under the auspices of Parliament and its select committee than the courts. If we agree that we want to give ourselves a 4 weeks timeline and build a roadmap of consensus, that is possible if we commit to it.
Okay.
But it comes back to the suspension, and you see, in the case of the media houses, what they did was to have their lawyers write to the court to tell the court that they were not withdrawing the cases, but they were writing to seek the leave of the court to suspend the case for them to attempt arbitration. Because don't forget, even our courts at times ask feuding parties to go into arbitration. So the lawyers did not withdraw the cases. What they did was to write to the court and say, we want to subject ourselves to arbitration to see if we can resolve the matter. Upon successful arbitration, they wrote and said they were withdrawing the cases completely. So without any prejudice to Giba's position, you've spent almost 3-4 months. No headway has been made yet for whatever reasons, a multiplicity of reasons. That's fine. Can we write to the courts and say, we want to attempt arbitration? Give the committee a 4-week period to try and arbitrate on this and see if we make no headway, you can go back and continue your case.
Let me ask him that. I mean, Cecil, is Giba willing to consider that option?
We have always said we must have further discussions in-house. I see Sam is talking about a number of new things today, which we haven't discussed with the select committee, and neither have we discussed with our membership, because we jointly agreed based on the circumstances at the time to go to court at our AGM. But I also have a question for Sam there. Does he find the action of the minister by issuing those invoices the next day after we had discussed, was that in good faith?
Absolutely not. And Cecil, don't go far. I have stated that, one, it did not show good faith to the conversations we had the day before. 2, the minister did not have legal basis because Parliament had not approved that. So that is not in question. On that, I am adding with you that given the conversations we had, and when you drew my attention and attention of the committee to the fact that the minister had the next day issued invoices, I was taken aback. But again, what I would have thought would have been that we could have then picked it up and brought the minister back to say to her, but madam, this is not what we had agreed on. Why did you act this way? You understand me? So I'm adding with you that that action in itself did not constitute good faith.
So Sam,
Yeah.
Sam, I think it's not all about Giba. We would also expect that the select committee comes to the fore. Okay, we haven't spoken with the committee on this issue till now that this thing has come up. So I think we also need to get some engagement going with the committee. We've dealt on so many other issues, and I think it's also time for the committee also to take that step towards us, because you always do that if you have to.
Yeah.
But we're in a position now. The issue with the court case, okay, I don't think it's necessarily. There's a process that goes on, and it's just that it's in court, and that's why I'm not mentioning. But I don't think the court is delaying the case. It is taking its path. There are set rules that are set in court, and I guess we're following that closely. So much as we believe in the court, if the select committee is making that conversation with us to look at other options, we're always open to have that discussion and agree with our membership. But you see, when an illegality is committed, for the members' sake and the investments and the future of media, Giba will not sit and let it go.
And that is definitely a position that anybody will take. And I guess nobody is fighting Giba on that, except that because of the issue surrounding the payment, the debt, whether you pursue it or not, that debt will accumulate to a point where the platform will shut down. I guess that's a whole point of this. That's a whole point. And the solution must be found, and the court doesn't solve that necessarily.
Well, the court is part of a solution, because what we asked for the court to determine, okay, will drive us into the point of engagement. If the court says that, yes, she does not have the authority to do what she did, then we come back and we would go by the right process.
But by the time you get to that conclusion, you may have you may be off it.
You see, we seem to forget that we have been sitting and waiting for the ministry since 2018 to have this process in place. So now we get to 2023 and there's debt, and because government says they cannot pay. So if government was still paying, would the ministry have come out with tariffs? Would the ministry have finalized the policy?
You know, Cecil, respectfully, if I may,
because government has said it's not paying, now there's pressure to push rates and all that. We've already lost the time. It is not because Giba went to court in August, so we have torpedoed the whole broadcast system in Ghana. There was a ministry responsible to have done this from 2018. It's 2023. And then in December, they turn around and say, Giba went to court in August, so Giba is torpedoing the whole broadcast system. It is not fair.
Cecil, if I may, for me, I don't begrudge you any of the points you've made. They are very valid points. The ministry in itself has slept on its responsibility. But the point I'm seeking to make here is that are we seeking to outline and apportion blame, or are we looking for a solution? A solution
because we actually have been blamed in this conversation. We're saying Giba.
No, I'm saying
it's going to cause
it doesn't mean you. The minister started off by putting the
and that's the point I'm making. Yeah. That look, Giba is going to blame the minister. The minister is going to blame Giba. That in itself does not save our DTT platform from shutdown. It does not save the jobs of broadcasters.
Like myself.
Exactly. I am looking for a solution. I'm not interested in who is blaming who, or who is right or who is wrong. I'm interested in a solution. I'm happy Cecil says that the court is a part of the solution. I am not looking for a part of the solution. I'm looking for the whole of the solution. Because even if this court case runs till 2024, and finally in December, a year from now, a judgment is given in the favor of Giba, let's assume that, it then means that it does not automatically resolve the problem. It does not automatically resolve the payment. You then now have to now start. Already there have been a cost that has accrued. If the platform is still active, we say thank you to God. But it then means you now have to come and start the conversations. And what I am saying is, if we all agree, if Giba had said to me at this program, if Cecil had said Giba does not believe they should pay, I would hands up and say we can't find a solution. But if Giba agrees that they need to pay, The ministry says they need to pay. We have a point of agreement. The service must be paid for. So now the question is, how much do you pay? Yeah. And I'm saying that can only be arrived. The court in itself cannot determine the price. The price will have to be determined by conversation between Giba and the ministry.
Okay.
And I'm saying that, Cecil, a solution to this, without prejudice to your case, will be to seek a suspension, bring it to the committee, and then we can sit with you and the ministry. Let's give ourselves 4 weeks. If we fail in 4 weeks to reach a conclusion, you can reactivate the case.
Well, Cecil has said that they're engaging their members on these proposals. Cecil, I guess that is the position of Giba. You're engaging your members on what to do now to try and resolve this matter.
Well, that is always what we do. But I think I must also state that we actually went to the select committee to try and walk the same path that Sam is talking about today. We went to them. We wrote to them specifically so we could chart the same path.
So with the greatest respect, what you wrote to us was about contribution link, not distribution.
Well, there were other issues, but I don't think.
But we dealt with contribution and not distribution.
We don't want to mix the other issues, and we've tried as much to keep the conversation to fees and charges.
Yeah.
But there are also other issues that are
other issues about contribution link and all that's different. But that's what the committee sat on.
Even the governance of the platform, there are policy issues, but we don't want to bring that discussion today. The fees and charges, even if we sort it, will not still give us the kind of platform and the kind of independence we want from the media.
And Cecil, the one thing is clear. That this is a far more complex problem. You talk about policy. That is also very important in this matter. This has to do with my livelihood, his livelihood, Cecil, and your ability to, I guess, believe in the democracy, which is anchored on, as you know, the 4 arms of government. And this is the 4th estate of the realm. And if it goes off, wake up in the morning without telling me. Sam George's campaign will be affected too, because he needs the media.
I need the media to campaign.
Exactly, he needs the media to campaign.
I need Cecil to run ads for me.
And by the way, and next year, broadcasting, we make a lot of money because the guys will be coming here and will be coming and paying us to come and, cover for them in terms of advertising, etc. So this needs to happen somewhat. And it's about finding a solution. Enjoy the rest of your evening.